The rain lashed against the isolated cabin's floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the Pacific Northwest woods outside into a shifting wall of dark, churning shadows. Inside, the vacation rental was supposed to be a week of family bonding. Instead, it had transformed into a slaughterhouse. Devin, rolling his eyes so hard it looked painful, slumped over the kitchen island. "Are you guys seriously doing this again? It's just a power outage. Stop acting like we're in a horror movie." "Devin, shut up for 5 seconds," Mackenzie snapped, scrolling mindlessly on her phone despite the dead Wi-Fi. "Just because you share a brain cell with a goldfish doesn't mean the rest of us aren't annoyed. Dad, tell him to stop breathing so loud." "Both of you, enough," Melvin said, his voice strained as he checked the deadbolt on the front door for the 3rd time. "Kathy, did you find the flashlights?" "In the hallway closet, but the batteries are corroded," Kathy called out from the dim corridor, her voice echoing. "Melvin, come look at this. The lock on the back sliding door, it's been forced open." Before Melvin could move, the front windows exploded inward with a deafening crash of shattering glass and splintering wood. A massive figure stepped through the frame, draped in a heavy, mud-soaked canvas coat. The intruder's face was obscured by a crude, stitched-together leather mask, and in his right hand he dragged a heavy, industrial meat hook that left a wet, scraping trail across the hardwood floor. Kathy screamed, backing out of the hallway. The killer moved with terrifying, unnatural speed. Before Melvin could reach his wife, the intruder lunged. With a sickening, dull thud, the meat hook drove straight through Kathy's chest, piercing her back. She gasped, blood instantly flooding her mouth and staining her favorite sweater a deep, violent crimson. "Kathy!" Melvin roared, lunging forward. The killer twisted the hook with a sickening crunch of tearing muscle and bone before wrenching it free, sending a thick arterial spray across the white walls. Kathy collapsed instantly, her body convulsing once before going completely still in a rapidly expanding pool of dark blood. "Upstairs, now!" Liam shouted, his voice cracking, but his eyes were entirely sharp, calculating the killer's movements. He grabbed Devin by the collar, hauling the terrified, stuttering 16-year-old toward the wooden staircase. "My phone! I left my phone!" Devin wept, freezing in panic. "If you don't move, you're gonna join Mom," Mackenzie yelled, her usual sarcastic attitude completely fractured into raw, hysterical terror as she shoved her younger brother past her. Melvin grabbed a heavy iron fireplace poker, standing his ground at the foot of the stairs to buy his children a few seconds. "Get to the roof hatch in the master bedroom. Liam, take care of your sisters." "Dad, come with us," Liam shouted back from the landing. "Go!" Melvin bellowed. The masked killer advanced up the stairs, ignoring Melvin's frantic swings. The heavy iron poker struck the killer's shoulder with a metallic clang, barely slowing him down. The killer retaliated instantly, driving a hunting knife deep into Melvin's abdomen. Melvin gasped, blood spilling over his hands as he clamped them onto the blade. Knowing he was mortally wounded and that the killer was tracking the older children up the stairs, Melvin threw his entire weight forward, tackling the intruder backward. They crashed over the open railing, tumbling down to the hardwood floor below. As the killer rose, infuriated, Melvin used his final ounce of strength to wedge the heavy oak dining table over the killer's legs, pinning him momentarily. "Mackenzie, run!" Melvin choked out, coughing up dark blood as his vision faded to black. Mackenzie screamed, frozen in horror at the bottom of the stairs, watching her father take his final, rattling breath. Liam grabbed her arm, yanking her hard up the steps. "We can't help him now, Mac. Move!" Liam slammed the heavy oak door of the master bedroom shut, shoving a massive dresser against the frame. The wood groaned under the weight, but it bought them precious seconds. "He's coming up," Devin whimpered, curled into a ball by the bed, completely paralyzed. "Devin, stop crying and listen to me," Liam ordered, his mind racing through every structural detail of the rental he had memorized upon arrival. "Mackenzie, give me your belt." "What? Why?" she demanded, wiping bloody tears from her face. "Just give it to me." Liam ripped the leather belt from her jeans, alongside his own. He grabbed the heavy glass lamp from the nightstand, smashing the bulb against the edge of the dresser. He wrapped the cords and belts around the jagged glass shards, creating a crude, improvised flail. "Mac, grab the heavy cast-iron skillet from the kitchenette downstairs. No, it's right here in the minibar." Heavy, rhythmic thuds echoed against the bedroom door. The panels began to splinter. The killer was hacking his way through. "He's getting through," Devon screamed. "Mackenzie, stand behind the door," Liam commanded, his voice dead serious. "When I kick the dresser aside, he's going to swing his axe through the opening. You're going to smash his arm with the skillet as hard as you can. Devon, stop shaking and grab the heavy bronze statue by the window. If he gets past us, you swing for his head. Don't miss." Mackenzie gripped the heavy skillet with both trembling hands, her jaw set. "I swear to God, if I die in this ugly cabin." Crack! The door splintered down the middle, and the blade of a heavy wood-chopping axe punched right through the gap, inches from Liam's face. Now, with a coordinated surge of adrenaline, Liam shoved the dresser back, and Mackenzie swung the cast-iron skillet with ferocious pent-up rage. The heavy metal connected with the killer's wrist with a sickening crack, shattering bone and causing the axe to drop clattering to the floor. Roaring in pain, the killer kicked the door off its remaining hinges, the heavy wood slamming into Liam and sending him flying across the room. The masked monster stepped into the room, blood dripping from his shattered wrist, his eyes locked on Mackenzie. He raised his hunting knife, stepping forward. "Hey, ugly!" Devon roared, his voice finally dropping its whiny pitch into a desperate scream, and charged forward, bringing the heavy bronze statue down squarely across the back of the killer's head. The killer staggered, turning his attention to Devon and backhanding the teenager across the room. Devon crashed into the wall, sliding down unconscious. Before the killer could finish Devon off, Liam lunged from behind, wrapping the glass-studded belt tightly around the killer's uninjured throat. With a feral cry, Liam twisted hard, driving the jagged shards deep into the killer's jugular vein. The killer thrashed wildly, dropping his knife and clawing desperately at his own neck, as dark, arterial blood squirted between Liam's fingers, painting the walls in a chaotic crimson spray. Mackenzie didn't hesitate. She grabbed the fallen axe from the floor, gripping the handle with both hands, and brought the heavy blade down in a brutal sweeping arc, directly into the killer's shoulder, cleaving deep through collarbone and muscle. The killer gave one final violent shudder, his legs buckling beneath him. He crashed face first onto the wooden floorboards, a massive pool of blood pooling rapidly around his head. The bedroom fell into a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the sound of the rain lashing against the windows and the ragged, sobbing breaths of the three surviving siblings. Liam dropped to his knees, his hands soaked in blood, staring blankly at the ruined floor. Mackenzie sank down next to him, her tough attitude completely gone, resting her head on his shoulder as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Across the room, Devon groaned, weakly pushing himself up from the floor, clutching a bruised jaw. He looked around the carnage, his eyes landing on the motionless forms of their parents down the hall and on the stairs. "Liam," Devon whispered, his voice trembling and small, "what do we do now?" Liam swallowed hard, looking toward the shattered window where the gray dawn was finally beginning to pierce through the dark Pacific Northwest trees. "We wait for the sun," Liam whispered back, putting a protective arm around his sister. "And then we walk out of here." The floorboards beneath them groaned under the weight of the carnage, slick with a thick, metallic-smelling layer of dark crimson. Liam kept his arm locked around Mackenzie, feeling her entire body tremble against his side as the adrenaline slowly began to drain out of her, leaving behind a hollow, bone-deep shock. "Devon," Liam said, his voice raw and strained, Get over here. Stop sitting on the floor and help me check him. Devon scrambled backward, pressing his back against the baseboard, clutching his bruised jaw. Check who? Are you insane? What if he's not dead? We need to be sure, Mackenzie muttered, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge, replaced by a dull, deadened tremor. She looked down at the heavy wood-chopping axe, still gripped in her blood-stained hands, her knuckles stark white. I'm not getting caught off guard twice. Liam crawled forward on his knees, avoiding the widening pool of blackish-red fluid spreading from the killer's throat. With his left hand, he reached out and grabbed the edge of the stitched-together leather mask, yanking it upward. The mask came away with a wet, tearing sound, revealing the face underneath. It was completely unremarkable. Middle-aged, slack-jawed, eyes glazed and fixed on the ceiling with a vacant, dead stare. The jagged, glass-studded belt was buried deep into his throat, and a dark, bubbling froth leaked from the corners of his mouth. He's done, Liam breathed, letting the mask drop from his bloody fingers. He exhaled a long, shuddering breath, wiping his forehead with the back of his forearm, only to smear a streak of gore across his skin. Good, Devon whispered, finally pushing himself up on shaking legs. He took 2 tentative steps toward the doorway, peering out into the dimly lit hallway. The glow of the morning light filtering through the high gable windows cast long, pale bars across the carpet. We have to go down there. We have to find Mom and Dad. The moment Devon said it, the air in the room grew heavy and suffocating. Mackenzie squeezed her eyes shut, a fresh, silent tear cutting a clean path through the dirt and blood on her cheek. No, Mackenzie said, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. We don't. You saw what happened on the stairs, Dev. Dad didn't make it. And Mom? She choked on the words, unable to finish the sentence. We can't just leave them up here alone, Liam said, forcing his legs to straighten. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest, bruised and battered from the struggle against the door. Devon's right. We have to go down. Step by agonizing step, the 3 siblings moved out of the master bedroom and into the hallway. The house was dead silent, save for the steady, relentless patter of rain outside and the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of blood pooling from the stair landing onto the foyer below. As they reached the top of the wooden staircase, the grim reality came into full view. Melvin lay crumpled near the bottom step, his hand still outstretched toward the front door, as if reaching for an escape that never came. A few feet away, half hidden by the dim shadows of the entryway, Kathy lay motionless, her sweater soaked through with a vast dark stain. Devon let out a choked sob, clapping both hands over his mouth to stifle the noise, turning his face away and leaning against the hallway wall. Liam didn't cry. His analytical mind, which had kept them alive a few minutes prior, now locked onto the immediate surroundings. He scanned the broken front windows where the glass shards still glistened like jagged teeth. Our phones, Liam said, his voice hollow. Where are our phones? Downstairs, in the kitchen island, Mackenzie answered, staring fixedly at the floorboards halfway down the stairs, refusing to look directly at their father's body. Or what's left of them. The bag was by the front door. I'll go, Liam said, stepping past them. Don't go down there by yourself, Mackenzie protested, her protective instinct flaring up despite the horror. He's dead, Mac. Look at him. Liam pointed back toward the master bedroom door, though the corpse was out of sight. There's only one of them. We're safe inside the house now, but we need to call someone. We need an ambulance, even though... He trailed off, knowing it was already far too late for their parents, but desperately needing police, needing the outside world to break through this nightmare. Liam carefully navigated around Melvin's body, keeping his eyes forward, and stepped into the open-concept kitchen. The island was a disaster area of spilled coffee mugs, shattered plates, and upturned chairs from when the initial panic hit. He spotted his ruined backpack lying near the wreckage of the front door. Kneeling down, he reached inside, ignoring the broken glass cutting into his fingertips, and pulled out his phone. The screen was cracked completely down the center, spiderwebbed into a useless mosaic of black glass, and the casing was bent at an unnatural angle. He pressed the power button anyway. Nothing. Not even a flicker of light. "It's dead," Liam called back up the stairs, his voice echoing loudly in the quiet cabin. "Completely smashed. Mine too," Mackenzie's voice drifted down from the landing. She and Devon had walked down a few steps, standing safely above the ground level. "It was in my back pocket when we ran. I must have landed on it when the door slammed." "What about the landline?" Devon asked, his voice shaking violently. "There has to be a landline in a rental like this." Liam looked around the kitchen counter. There was an old-fashioned wall-mounted phone next to the refrigerator. He rushed over to it, lifting the receiver to his ear. There was no dial tone, just a faint, high-pitched hum of static, followed by a sharp automated click. "The line is dead," Liam realized, his stomach dropping. The killer must have severed the exterior phone and power lines before breaking the front window, or the falling tree branch outside had ripped them away when the storm hit. They were completely cut off, miles up a winding mountain road with no working vehicle, since the keys were still in Melvin's pocket at the bottom of the stairs. Liam slowly set the receiver back down on its cradle, the plastic click sounding sickeningly loud in the quiet room. He walked back toward the stairs, looking up at his brother and sister. Their pale, blood-streaked faces stared back down at him, waiting for an answer they already knew. "The line's cut," Liam said quietly. "We have to walk down to the main road." "Walk?" Devon squeaked, his eyes wide with panic. "In this storm? Through the woods? What if there are more of them? What if he had a partner?" "He didn't have a partner," Liam said, stepping up the stairs and putting a firm hand on Devon's shoulder. The younger boy was shaking so hard he could barely stand. "We looked around the property when we first got here. It's miles from the nearest neighbor, but the highway is only about a mile down the private access trail. If we leave right now, before the sun is fully up, we can make it to the main road and flag someone down." Mackenzie looked down at her father one last time, her jaw tightening as she swallowed hard, fighting back the wave of nausea rising in her throat. She gripped the handle of the bloody axe tighter, resting the heavy metal head against the floorboards as she stood up straight. "Let's go," Mackenzie said, her voice hard, stripped of all its usual sarcasm, leaving only a cold, enduring survival instinct. "I'm not staying in this house another second." Liam nodded. He reached down, carefully slipping his fingers into Melvin's jacket pocket to retrieve the car keys. Not to drive, but to ensure they had the house key to lock the front door behind them, sealing the horror inside. With one last, lingering look at the wreckage of their family, the three siblings turned their backs on the living room, stepped over the broken glass of the front entryway, and pulled the heavy oak door shut behind them, locking it tight as they stepped out into the freezing, relentless rain of the dark forest. The heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing off the interior carnage, but the forest outside offered no sanctuary. The Pacific Northwest storm had intensified, turning the dirt access trail into a churning river of mud that sucked greedily at their sneakers with every step. Liam took the lead, holding a heavy metal flashlight he'd grabbed from the kitchen drawer. The beam cut through the thick sheets of rain, illuminating the dense walls of towering pines and dripping ferns that pressed in close on either side of the path. Behind him, Mackenzie walked close, the wood-chopping axe balanced awkwardly in her grip, her eyes darting constantly into the impenetrable blackness of the woods. Devon brought up the rear, sobbing quietly into his sleeve, his breath coming in ragged, freezing gasps that puffed white in the damp air. "Keep moving, Dev. Don't look back," Liam instructed, his voice cutting sharply through the roar of the wind. His own body was a map of dull aches, the adrenaline wearing off to expose the raw cost of the fight. They pressed down the incline, navigating the slippery roots and jagged rocks of the private road. Every snap of a distant branch, every sudden shift in the wind, sounded like approaching footsteps. Devon stumbled, his foot sinking knee-deep into a muddy ditch. He let out a sharp cry, falling forward into the wet dirt. "Get up, Devon," Mackenzie hissed, dropping to one knee and grabbing him roughly by the jacket. "If you stop here, I swear I'm leaving you for the wolves." "I can't," Devon wept, pulling his leg free with a squelching pop. His jeans were soaked in dark mud, clinging to his shivering legs. "My ankle, I think I twisted it." Liam turned back, shining the flashlight beam directly into his younger brother's tear-streaked, terrified face. "Lean on me. Put your arm around my shoulder. We're almost at the highway guardrail. I can see the reflective markers through the trees." Dipping their heads against the horizontal sheets of rain, Liam hoisted Devon's weight onto his side. They lurched forward together, Mackenzie marching defensively behind them, sweeping the heavy axe head low to the ground to keep their flank clear. 200 yards ahead, the dark silhouette of the highway guardrail finally loomed out of the fog. A pair of twin yellow headlights cut through the storm in the distance, casting a sweeping beam across the asphalt of the main road. "Car!" Mackenzie shouted over the howling wind, waving her free hand wildly in the air. "Hey, over here!" Liam dragged Devon up the steep gravel embankment, bursting out of the tree line onto the shoulder of the highway just as a massive semi-truck roared past, throwing a violent wall of spray over them. The truck's taillights faded red into the downpour without slowing down. "Wait! Don't leave us!" Devon screamed hoarsely, collapsing against the cold metal guardrail. "Another one will come," Liam panted, scanning the empty stretch of blacktop that stretched north and south into the fog. He reached into his pocket to check the keys he'd grabbed, making sure they hadn't fallen out during the scramble up the mud bank. As Liam pulled his hand out, a second set of headlights appeared around the bend, moving much slower, driving cautiously through the blinding storm. It was a local county sheriff's cruiser. Mackenzie immediately stepped out onto the paved shoulder, planting her feet and waving the heavy flashlight in wide, frantic circles, the beam bouncing off the wet hood of the patrol car. The cruiser slowed instantly, its bright high beams locking onto the three blood-soaked, freezing teenagers standing in the middle of the highway. The red and blue emergency lights clicked on, flashing brilliant, disorienting strobes against the towering pines. The cruiser pulled onto the shoulder with a crunch of gravel. The driver's side door pushed open, and an older sheriff's deputy stepped out into the rain, resting his hand instinctively on the holster at his hip as he took in the horrifying sight of their blood-drenched clothes and the heavy axe clutched in Mackenzie's white-knuckled grip. "Kids, what in God's name happened to you?" the deputy called out, pulling a yellow slicker tighter around his chest as he hurried forward, his flashlight beam pinning them to the spot. Liam opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He simply pointed back up the dark, winding dirt trail that led into the heart of the storm-lashed woods, where the cabin sat locked and silent in the dark. The deputy's radio crackled to life with a burst of static and distorted dispatch chatter as he stared at the blood on their clothes, his hand slowly sliding away from his holster and dropping to his side in stunned horror. "Get inside the cruiser, right now," the deputy ordered, his authoritative tone fracturing as he looked back up the pitch-black access trail. He reached out, gently but firmly guiding Devon and Mackenzie toward the back door of the patrol car, while Liam helped support his younger brother's weight. They piled into the back seat, the heater blasting warm, dry air that felt agonizingly harsh against their freezing, shock-numbed skin. The doors slammed shut, locking them inside a protective cocoon of flashing red and blue light. Through the rain-streaked rear window, they watched the deputy grab a heavy tactical flashlight from his passenger seat, unclip his service weapon, and begin cautiously making his way up the muddy embankment toward the tree line. Backup sirens wailed in the distance, tearing through the storm as more cruisers raced up the highway.